Well, hey there, podcast buddies. How you doing today?
So good. You just came out of nowhere with that intro.
I figured we had to start at some point. Now is as good a time as any.
I'm into it.
Yeah.
I am surviving. I am at the end of this journey, and I'm still alive. So you know what? We're winning. We're going to take a win here.
Right on.
Doing great.
And I'm in the same boat. I'm a little tired. I'm a little wired. I'm extremely wired because we are recording on election night.
Ooh, it's weird.
So there's a lot of information that has flown into our brains in the last couple of hours and just turned off everything. And so, yeah, kind of reeling from that. But otherwise, everything is fine. Everything is awesome. How about you?
I am doing better than surviving. I'm happy the season is coming to a close because I feel like we definitely need a bit of a breather. So seeing season 10 pop up, and it just feels like we hit this huge, huge milestone, and it's such a welcome milestone. Mm-hmm. It's been a cool season. We've had a lot of curveballs thrown our way this season, and I think we did just fine.
As someone who has had a front row seat to it, I think that, so for those of you that don't know, Scarlett does the vast majority of the editing of the audio portion of the podcast, and Marjorie does the vast majority / all of the video portion of our podcast and dealing with YouTube and whatnot. And you two have had a maelstrom of just malarkey thrown your way this season with all of the technical issues we've had moving back into the studio. It has been a fucking marathon, and you two have rocked it.
Thank you, my love.
It was like a boot camp of figure out every way to solve every problem that could ever happen. So now we got it. We're good.
Yeah.
We're going to upgrade our equipment. Everything's going to be so easy come next season. But we made it. We got honestly, there were several times in this season that I didn't think we were going to get episodes out in time. So the fact that we had every episode out with the Monday schedule, that we thankfully gave ourselves that wiggle room, because there would have been a couple weeks it wouldn't have been out. Had to been earlier. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I think we did it. We got through it.
We did it. And also, by the time you guys listen to this, you will have already listened to our interview with the man, the myth, the legend, Bruce Miller. And that in itself, to end our season with that, I actually feel like we ended our season already. Never mind the fact that
the big thing happened.
We made it through most of it, and the big part was interviewing Bruce. That was mind-blowing for us, and now I'm just like, oh yeah, we got this one more episode.
And it was kind of funny because just in terms of how the season went with just curveball after curveball after curveball, it was in our final week, it was one more final curveball of less than 24 hours. Go, figure it out.
Yeah.
And we got it together. We got shifts covered, and we were all in front of cameras when we needed to be, and it was great. It was the coolest experience. So
it really was. It was such a blast. And felt so organic, and it was just a really fun time, and we really appreciated that Bruce went in depth. That man basically went scuba diving for answers for us, and
it was just so fun.
It was
so
it was a
cool.
lot of fun. If you haven't listened to it already, or you haven't watched the episode already, I strongly encourage you to follow up this episode with that one, because there are a lot of season 5 spoilers. He gets into some of the stuff with season 6, just the process overall with the entirety of it, and it was a true pleasure and delight for the three of us. So thank you, Bruce.
Thank you so much. Oh, it was brutal for me trying to edit the actual interview while I was doing notes for this episode, because all I kept coming up with was more and more questions. And I was like, damn it, it's really hard to do follow-up questions when you can't actually ask them. So I just started compiling lists. There was one that was really big that I just thought of that I was like, I can't believe we didn't ask about it. But of course, now I can't remember, so whatever.
It'll come back to you at a time where it doesn't matter at all. I promise. Because they always do. Well, speaking of Bruce Miller, he wrote this episode, and this episode was directed by Elizabeth Moss. Mm-hmm. And the episode we're talking about is season 5, episode 10, Safe. And, man, we don't really have a drink pairing for this, right?
We don't have a drink pairing today, namely because it is election night and Marjorie and I are going to have to be dealing with driving home late night, so better safe than sorry.
Word.
So I am actually ill prepared for that part of the that part, and I apologize, everyone. But I think considering this episode was so sobering, and the fact that again election night, whatever happens, is going to be a sobering experience for the whole of America. For our international listeners, please pray for us. I think we needed to kind of keel it back a little bit. So we're all having a different iteration of kombucha.
Yeah, I'm having some calming lavender melon.
Yeah.
What did you say earlier?
And it's absolutely refreshing and amazing.
I'm having a mojito lime mint coconut flavored.
Whoa, that's nice.
Yeah, so something that's still a little bit mocktail-ish, but pretending and feigning to do something good for myself.
I got tried and true lemon cayenne, my favorite.
Keep it classic.
Mm-hmm.
And dark cherry lime energy drink, natural, because I've been doing nothing but energy drinks all day, so it's time to switch it up, but I still need to have some kind of energy, so here we are. But I really appreciate that you just tied in our non-drinks, Roxy. You have a skill.
Yeah.
It is a skill for bullshit, and
You know
only
what?
that.
While we're here at the beginning of this episode, and you were talking about our editing and our roller coaster of a season, I have to give you some real props in that interview, because we really threw you not under the bus, but we threw you in front of the bus because I knew you'd get out of the way. Like Scarlett and I would have been hit, so I tossed you in front, and you nailed it. See, what happened was we didn't have a lot of time to actually prepare. Like, we kind of knew the interview was coming in theory. Like, we were hoping it was going to happen, but we didn't have a lot of time once we actually had an actual date. It was less than 24 hours to figure out what we were doing. So we had an emergency meeting at midnight. We all had questions. We had a plan. But then the next day, before the interview, we were only going to have 15 minutes in front of each other before Bruce jumped on. So Roxy was coming in the middle of her workday. Like, just in the middle of her workday, she's just going to have people cover her, drive up the street, jump in front of this interview, and then the second the interview is off, go back to work while we're still on Zoom and like fangirling over the whole thing. And Roxy's like, yep, and I'm back. Sorry I had to do that. I'm like, sorry you had to do that, actually. But in the whole process of that, in that 15 minutes, one of the things we hadn't discussed was who was going to do the intro. Roxy was taking the first question.
Oh my
but
gosh,
Scarlett was going to do the intro, but only because she's only ever done all the intros. But the thing with Scarlett is I know that she is entirely capable of doing a beautiful intro if she knows that she has to do one.
Right.
But no one talked about it. And so I just knew it was very possible that it was not on the forefront of her mind whatsoever.
And it was not.
And now Bruce is already in front of us. We are ready to, we've already been talking. We've been doing off-camera talking. And now we're about to start this interview. And all of a sudden, I remember that we haven't had this discussion. Yeah. And so they're trying to work it out in real time of like, quick, who's going to do it? But then I hear the miscommunication of Roxy trying to tell Scarlett, well, you're going to do the intro. And Scarlett taking that as, well, I'm taking the first question. Why are you changing this right now?
Yes.
And I'm going, this is, oh gosh, we are going to trip over each other before we even start. And so Roxy does something better than anyone I know, is she can just open her mouth and beautiful sentences come out in a way that I just don't know how she does it. So at the very last second, I said, oh, no, Roxy, you're going to do the intro. And she went, oh, okay, all right, great. And then 2 seconds later, she's into an intro. And I would never, ever be able to do that. And so for you to do that and then go into this interview, that was just a really high stress, like high anxiety, high excitement situation for everything you were dealing with, for us to throw you that curveball. I mean, thank you for taking that, because it was beautiful.
Excellent recovery.
You're very sweet for saying that. Quite literally, as the words were coming out of my mouth and I realized I said Bruce motherfucking Miller, I was like, can't backpedal from this one. We're done. So we're just gonna roll into it.
You told me I could have cut it. I thought you liked it. I was like, I'm gonna edit your words.
Was I supposed to cut that?
No, I didn't cut it.
As long as he was unfazed by it, it was fine.
Yeah, it was all fine. And we had a wonderful interview. And
Yeah,
it was
we
great,
did.
But I just really had to give you some props there, because we were just like, and go, and you did. So, and it was like smack dab in the middle of your workday. Like, it was just nice work.
Well,
Nice
thank you.
work.
I'm going to credit that to way too much time in the restaurant industry and having to pivot from like bantering in the back with my coworkers, all of you two, and then immediately having to transition onto the floor and be like, okay, and now it's go time.
Yeah, I
and
don't know.
it is a skill that both of you also have. I just happened to showcase it at that exact moment. So thank you.
Yeah, we're like modern Downton Abbey over here.
It could be worse if we're talking about the help. It could be modern The Remains of the Day.
I don't think I've seen that.
Never even heard of it.
I have.
Oh, man.
And I'm not surprised about that.
The worst part is I don't even get the context of what that joke is. There's so many different ways that could be. Are we talking about architecture again?
Oh, man.
Speaking of brutalism, sorry, I'm making an arbitrary reference to a book by I can't remember his name, but a Japanese author that was made into a movie in the 1980s with Anthony Hopkins and Emma Thompson. It's fine. I'm just
entirely valid.
I'm
There
just
is
going to sit
nothing
over
about
here
that
making my.
sentence that would make me have any knowledge of what you're talking about.
It's fine. I'm just going to sit over here and keep making my really bad off the beaten path references and
I think they're
not have either of
great.
you pick them up.
They're great.
Cool.
Hey, I knew what you were talking about because I spent my formative years working under the table at not working under a table in a video store, working at
Hey-o.
a video store for under the table. And I remember that video. I remember, yeah, because I'm wicked old.
Picture little Scarlett at her little desk under the little table.
Whoa.
I was picturing that very wholesomely. You took that different places.
Of course I took it a different place.
So you're working under a desk.
Oh my God. Hey guys, do we want to talk about an episode?
We should
are we
probably
doing a
do that.
podcast?
We're doing a
See, this is
podcast.
great. I mean, we
Do
might.
you want to talk about this
In
show?
previous episodes, we spent like 10 minutes talking about what we were drinking, and that annoyed people. So now let's spend 10 minutes just talking about nothing.
You know what? At least the damn
Awesome,
episode's going to be
yes.
out on time. Because there was a moment where when the week was falling apart in front of my eyes in terms of just the amount of time I had and how I was going to get it all done. And I was like, you know what? It's the last episode where it's not time sensitive anymore. Can we float this recording? We'll have the Bruce interview. Can we just float it? And Scarlett was like, do you remember the reviews? And I was like, fine, we'll just put the
There were
stupid
people that
episode
couldn't
out.
move on with their lives, Marjorie.
I will never forget that comment.
I loved that one.
We need to move on with our lives. I'm like, oh, nobody stopped you. Move on.
Carry on.
We are trying to maintain our lives right now, and I need a fucking week off.
Please don't hold Which is to say, long story long, at the end of the day, the fact that, like, we managed to pull this out of our asses, all of the work and credit to the two of you, while also working full-time, raising kids, dealing with all of the bullshit. Yeah, we have real lives, we have normal lives and things outside of here, and, like, the fact that you two managed to pull off everything that you did this episode, brava. A round of snaps.
All right.
Oh, yeah, so we should probably talk about an episode, huh?
Yeah.
Like you said.
Let me make sure I'm
I
recording.
have like some just initial things that I need to get off my chest that I know we're going to come back to. God damn it, I had fun this episode.
Gosh, it was just great.
I love how it was so fast paced. You totally forget that Serena exists. I love every single callback in the imagery and the dialogue. And there are so many. I know I won't remember them all, but I know every time I rewatch, I'm going to find a new one. And that is so cool. There was so much horror and dread and so much discord. And then at the end, like when Serena is the only familiar face that June has, like fortunately or unfortunately, depends on who you're talking to.
Yep.
Like I was utterly delighted, and that was a really unexpected reaction.
Yes. Yes.
I you know, that's the bane of her
know.
existence, and I was thrilled. Like we wanted to see her fuck off into the sunset forever. But after this goddamn episode, after the series managed to scramble my brains again, here I am, just dismayed, eager for more, and strangely excited that June and Serena were the people on the train looking at each other's eyes as they were going off into the
I know.
horizon. Awesome! I fucking love it!
Yeah.
I loved all of it. It was fun. Yeah. I'm just so pumped. Like Aunt Lydia. I am
Well,
so pumped.
we have not utilized that callback as much as we should this season. No, it was a good one. Thanks for bringing that back.
Yeah, I mean, don't look at me, man. Like, this whole episode was a fucking wild ride through and through. And the pacing was perfect. The timing was brilliant. And again, that final scene. But we will get to the final scene once we get to the second half.
I think that this was really cool because as we're going down the street, like this music is eerie, but there's absolutely nothing happening. There's just nothing going on. Neighborhood's quiet. June's just kneeling in her garden. And
Well, what was her garden?
what was her garden? What's left of her garden, which seems to have some, really nice composted soil over it now. The delivery peeps show up. And, because I was already on alert. What?
No, go ahead.
Oh. Because I was already on alert due to that like hollow, high-pitched, windy sound. Like I was super worried about that package because it was giving me Unabomber vibes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really, I saw the package and I'm like, shit's going to explode. I know it.
I mean, I was worried about the package because the name of the delivery service was Red.
Oh, I didn't
Is that
notice
what it was?
That's-
I couldn't really make out what was on the side of the truck. I knew it was an R&D.
R-E-D, which, again, the color of Handmaid. So as soon as that delivery service pulled up, I was just like, this is a blatant nod that it's going to be something Gilead-esque immediately. I mean, which of course it's going to be. They wouldn't show us anything that wasn't at this point because all of these episodes have been so tightly edited that they're not going to waste their time with like, oh, June received a letter in the mail for jury duty or what have you. I don't know. I'm just pulling that out of my ass. But yeah, so seeing that like that Red was delivering something, I was like, this is going to be Gilead related, and it like drives that point home so clearly.
I didn't even notice that. Excuse me. I like the opening image of her in front of that garden. It looked like a burial plot, which is so
did.
perfect. And probably back to that scene once again with that song that I botched the explanation of, but it's called Burial and Prayer. And I was like, oh, it's so perfect. It just looks like she is right in front of a grave, a new grave. And that was her little garden of hope, which reminds me, of course, I like, let me just tell you a little brief, because I do not have the context for this in front of me. Stay tuned for part 2. I'll bring it up from part 2. Somewhere in my notes that I can't access because I don't have internet at the moment, I pulled out a quote from The Handmaid's Tale, the original book, because we spend a whole lot of time talking about the Testaments. But you know what? The series, The Handmaid's Tale, there's a whole section about June talking about Serena's garden and how subversive it is. And there's a lot there. I didn't even begin to unpack all the ways in which we could take this and rabbit hole because there is a lot. But basically, this entire season of us talking about this garden, I'm like, it's in the original text. It's in the original text. June thinks that this is Serena's subversive garden. So, of course, she's going to be doing it. So it was interesting. I will pull up the actual quote. But yeah, that could be a off-season whole episode conversation is all the ways in which the show has utilized gardens in 5 seasons, but it is in the original book, so now we know.
Love that. But anyway, June gets this package and takes it upstairs and hesitantly starts putting on a bulletproof vest to open it. Well, that's dark.
Yeah, this is her life now.
Yeah.
I was just happy the package didn't explode, so
Yeah.
I was really waiting for that.
Take the win, Marjorie.
Exactly. I will take protection over a bomb.
Yeah.
I like the shot of her putting it on and looking in the mirror because we've seen so much of her putting on Gilead costumes. And I'm like, it's just another Gilead costume for her. She's never going to get out of having to wear attire because of this place.
Mm-hmm. And she sees that. That comes across so clearly in her face as well, in conjunction with the light shining directly into her eyes and reflecting into her eyes.
She looks so raw, too. Just worn. I feel like this
Exhausted.
whole episode, that's all I could think of was 5 seasons of exhaustion and all the things she's been through. And you could just see it on her face the whole episode. It's great.
This very small thing was also spooky. I mean, even just her view of her sneakers on the front porch, I was like, oh my God, there's something about that. And I'm like, no, there's really not. But they're definitely setting up the scene for you to look at every little possible thing that could be wrong. So by the time Luke appears behind her in the mirror, she jumped and I jumped. Yeah. So mission accomplished. So she's got this vest because she's supposed to be doing a prayer at the memorial services. And I like this scene with June and Luke. It was very tender and it was very real. The words were real. But they were doing that or at least she was replying in that I love you kind of way where everything is really fucking terrible and it doesn't really matter how many times you say I love you to each other. Shit still sucks pretty goddamn bad. And it just feels inadequate, but you're just doing the thing. Yeah. It's like that. And I did like Luke tucking her into the vest. I feel like my husband would have done the same thing. I know he would have.
You know what I thought was really interesting? It's kind of subtle, but I feel like it's kind of, I feel like it had to be intentional in some way. But the episode's called Safe. And I noticed it, I picked it up at the end in the final scene with Luke and June. I feel like he was saying okay a lot and then she was saying okay a lot and I was like, okay, safe. Like it was like just similar verbiage and the similar feeling. And then I went back and I looked and it's every scene that June and every scene that Luke and Nick are in, every time they're talking to June or about June, it is talking about keeping her safe, being safe, she'll be okay, are you okay? And then in the last scene, she's got Nicole and she's so alone and she keeps saying you're going to be okay. And it's kind of like probably more for herself, but it was just, I just really like that because it starts subtle. In the scene, it's just once, he says you got to be safe, they move on. And as in each scene, it just kind of picks up the intensity and they keep saying it more and more as they realize how unsafe they are.
Yeah.
Cool.
How about that window seat?
Oh my gosh, with the light just streaming down onto her shoulders.
This was the freakiest goddamn thing because the way the light, like it washes through her. It's not just on her. It looks like it's going through her and she looks like a ghost. And it's kind of reminiscent of definitely the end of season 3 where there's that, where there's this scene of her in front of the window at Commander Lawrence's house and it takes on like this very sinister tone, but then we see it in other spots throughout the whole series. And in this iteration, she looks like a wisp of herself.
Are you thinking of when she's loading the hand, or when she's like has the handgun I'm trying to remember a scene specifically where she's loading up the handgun and it's in like sort of slow motion. Yeah. Okay.
In the finale?
Yes.
Yep.
It's she does seem fragile. Like it's like the light is shining through her. I feel like the bastards have been grinding her down this whole season in spite of like her safety in Canada.
Right.
And we've seen her low and scared and helpless, but we haven't seen her this low and scared and helpless since Gilead.
Right. Right. And that's what I mean, I'm sure that's the point, but that's exactly what it feels like is like she's never going to be safe. She is always going to be on the run. She's always, no matter where she goes, there's going to be a new window for her to sit and contemplate how awful all of her reduced circumstances are. It's awful. And it sets the tone for the rest of the episode perfectly.
And then we get to cut to back to Gilead and get to hang out with Nick and Lawrence for a little bit.
I thought the aerial view of this with all the commanders, they look like ants in a maze. And when they look like that, they look so much more expendable.
Don't they?
Yes.
I know, huh? I agree. That's exactly what I was thinking. And we haven't seen, we saw a lot of this imagery in, I think, season 3 of the aerial shots where everyone just looked like ants. It was, I think, in DC a lot. Remember, like, the one with just her one red umbrella?
Yeah.
The only things I have in this scene are that this is the start of the degradation of Lawrence and Nick's relationship for sure. And it comes crashing down aggressively quickly, which shows you just how fragile that house of cards was for the two of them. Like Lawrence is talking about how like Americans are particularly grating and Nick says like she's not a target. She's fighting for her daughter. And Lawrence just says, well, this is what happens in a fight. Everyone gets bloody. You know that you know that to be true more than most.
He's really cold here.
Yeah.
We haven't seen this Commander Lawrence in a pretty long time.
Yeah, but it was a little bit reminiscent of the Lawrence we've always seen too, which is interesting because I feel like this Lawrence has always been there.
He's always been there, but I feel like we haven't really seen him come out to play to be that.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Do we think that hearing June call him for the monster that he is and acknowledge that she could have saved Eleanor but didn't, and hearing June say that Eleanor hated you. Do we think that that may have stripped the last bit of humanity that this man was willing to show?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I think that it's the interesting word choice he has is when he says to Nick, she had a choice, Commander. She had 1,000 choices. And first of all, the first thing it made me think is that that's Larry. He's always making her make these difficult choices. Like that, it's like this game he plays. And so it's like, that's what I mean by like this. He's always been there. We've always been seeing this with him. But it also then made me realize that she had a choice with Eleanor too. And that's just really interesting word choice.
She had a choice with whether or not to save Eleanor, and she had a choice whether or not to disclose that information to Lawrence.
Yeah.
She chose to make a powerful enemy with those sentiments, and yes, it was cathartic to for her to say it, and we appreciated that this is finally out in the open. But there are, of course, ramifications to this, which we are going to see.
And I think it was probably, I mean, I'm sure there was spite in there and feelings and emotions involved too, but Larry's so pragmatic that I think that any kind of kindness he shows to June or any help he gives her from this point on, it jeopardizes his safety and his power and his rank. And so I feel like for her to throw that in his face at that point, he's like, well, why am I putting my neck on the line in the way that he feels he is? I'm sure she doesn't feel that way, but to him, you know, he's got Mackenzie breathing down his neck. Any move he makes for June's sake is going to look bad. So I feel like after that conversation, he's like, you know what? Good riddance, June.
Yeah, it does for sure feel like that.
I thought it was interesting what he says to Nick, too, at the end of that. You know, everyone gets bloody. Everyone. He says, that you know to be true, Commander. So I feel like he was kind of throwing in Nick's face whatever the hell is in Nick's past. I mean, I'm sure that he didn't just mean the Putnam thing there. Because Nick's got a history, and we don't know a whole lot about that history.
Yeah, definitely.
Something else about this scene that I really did appreciate as well was the running up the stairs shot. That sort of, to me, mirrored the imagery of Serena running up the stairs to get to Noah, and the imagery of just the stairs in general at the Wheelers' house. I don't know whether that was intentional, but to me felt like with both of them just running up and running down, walking down those stairs, kind of giving this feeling of like Gilead's presence is so multi-tiered. It's never just a matter of like taking it at face value. For me, like at least because like they're constantly going up these different levels to get to what part where they are what part of whomever they are trying to reach, and perhaps I am thinking of this too metaphorically, but it really struck me as like they have to plow through so many different layers of Gilead bullshit just to reach the person that they are trying to get to.
No, I like that, and I'll take it even further because later we got Janine going up a very infamous set of stairs. And so it's the same thing. It works with your metaphor. And then there's June at the end coming down the stairs, and it's kind of like flipped around. So I'm into it because I noticed the Janine going up and then June going down when she wakes up from the nap and goes downstairs. And then she's got to go, she's got to run. I like that stair imagery. So yeah, I'm into it. I like your metaphor.
Cool.
That was
Rabbit holes. It's what we do.
Oh, it sure is.
Sure is.
Do we want a new scene?
One other thing, just because it did remind me of what Bruce had said in the interview about June in the first episode having like just working out all of her choices, and every choice every time she makes a choice, it doesn't work out. So I really, again, love that line with Larry of she had a choice, Commander. She had 1,000 choices because that's how she started the season. And I just love a bookend.
Yes. It is going to be very hard to go through this episode, by the way, knowing that like we've had that conversation with Bruce and thinking about all like that conversation is going to affect a lot of what we're saying.
I know. I'm telling you. I'm trying to do my notes, and I'm like, this changes things.
But anyway, so after that lovely conversation or the interaction with Nick and Lawrence, we get to cut to the handmaids scrubbing the floor. Very reminiscent of them scrubbing blood off of the wall. This is not the first time that we've seen anyone scrubbing. And they've clearly been at it for a while.
Yeah, they're tired and this sucks.
Do we think this is a punishment for anything? Or just,
Just service to God.
Classic.
Keeping them busy. They got to do something.
Yeah.
It's true. So why not just sing along to sing "It's a Hard Knock Life" from Annie while you're doing it?
So much. I love it.
Of course, it's Janine that comes out with that.
know. Blessed be the Fruit Loops.
It's so
May
perfect.
What does she? She makes a Star Wars joke at some point. I can't remember what it is.
As opposed to as opposed to "May the Force be with you."
Yes, and then doesn't she say something else too in that whatever, it's the episode where June leaves to go
The Red Commander.
Yes, thank you, because
Yeah.
I didn't even know it was a Star Wars reference. What is she talking about?
I didn't either. And Roxy, if it wasn't for you, I would have no idea.
I was spoon-fed Star Wars from a very early age. Of course, I'm going to pick up on that nonsense. Anyway. Yeah, so Janine is the one that inspires them all to start singing "It's a Hard Knock Life," and then is also the one with a keen lookout for Code Brown.
That's so funny, right?
So cute. Yeah.
Yeah, usually Code Brown, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, the parents in the room, but usually I hear Code Brown, and like I've heard parents say that before for like slang for like poop in a diaper.
Oh, no. I don't think I've ever used that one.
Got a Code Brown
that's
here.
definitely the imagery I thought of.
Yeah.
Of like poop.
Yes. And not
Well, yeah, that's what I thought of too, but I've never used it.
Well, in any event, something shitty is on its way up those stairs, and Aunt Lydia approacheth. So all of the girls duly fall in line.
But she liked this.
She liked it. She had to stifle it, but she did enjoy that they were taking pleasure in their work. She believes that he would prefer a more appropriate hymn.
What the fuck's an appropriate hymn? I don't even know hymns, so.
No, you're looking at me.
I'm not. I'm
Well,
just
she's
like,
not gonna look at me. So
yeah.
music.
You have a far greater
religious
chance
music.
of knowing a hymn than this one.
I mean, bridge over troubled waters. That's all I got. Amazing Grace. I don't know any of the other ones.
Oh, yeah, I know that one.
Yeah.
I know
I know
Amazing
some
Grace.
hymns actually. Let me think of some. Isn't there one about light? Jesus loves the little children. That's a song, right?
That sounds
I
right.
don't know.
This little light of mine. That's a religious
Oh,
song, right?
okay.
I don't know.
Yeah,
I think I'm talking
it
about two
is.
different songs. I don't mean them to go together, but are they the same? Maybe this. Never mind.
I don't know. Again, hymns.
That's why this one doesn't know that, and that's why she looked to you. The end.
I can do music. I can't do religious hymns. I was not raised in an Orthodox religious situation where we sung hymns.
Yeah, that's true. You have a religious education. It's just unique.
Yes. Much more verse related. Anyway. So I don't know. I don't know which hymn Aunt Lydia would have preferred, unfortunately, but she does look joyful that the girls seem to at least be taking some. I think Aunt Lydia misconstrued that they were taking joy in their work as opposed to what was actually happening and trying to find joy in the misery they were surrounded by.
Did she not get the reference? Probably not.
Which, considering her backstory, I mean, she's a school teacher, or she was a school teacher.
Yeah.
It would stand to reason that she at least had some familiarity with Little Orphan Annie. I feel like this is something that comes up referentially in elementary schools as just part of the zeitgeist.
That's fair.
I feel like I could picture this going right over Aunt Lydia's head. It kind of like, at the protests like last year, election protests, when you had people that were that conservatives jamming out to Rage Against the Machine.
Yeah.
Like the irony is
We
just
talked
like
about this on the podcast. I'm
right
so
over,
sure of it.
right over
yeah,
their heads.
This is like how Paul Ryan would work out to Rage Against the Machine. It's like, oh, honey, sweetheart, do you not see?
I know.
Do you?
That's
Does
funny.
irony get your heart rate going? Is that what this
Oh,
is?
man.
That's what he's been. That's all he was doing. He was pumping irony.
That's good.
So this is Aunt Elizabeth, I think.
Yeah.
She kind of rains on Lydia's good feelings parade when she gives her the heads up about how people know, Lids, that you favor Janine and, you might want to post her soon. And Lydia barely acknowledges her advice, but did you notice how the ringing of the bells had this, it kind of almost had this like Tibetan singing bowl reverberation to them, and it made it sound really piercing. And I feel like that was the first inkling of Lydia getting this idea for what we're going to see very soon.
Potentially, but there was also the Discord music that was interlaced with that.
Yep.
And Aunt Elizabeth's words were quite ominous. I mean,
Yep.
people have been slow to notice your charity towards Janine, but they are noticing. She needs to find another posting, or they'll find a use for her. And it's the they'll find a use for her. That was really that really struck me right before the church bells and Discord music, because who's they? Who is they? And obviously it's the men folk or other aunts. But this felt like Lydia's walls were kind of closing in around her, and she needed to make a decision so that way she could continue to maintain her position of power.
Yeah, because we don't know who they is exactly. You're right. We know it's we can guess.
Yeah, we know the implication.
Right, but Lydia's always saying, these are my girls, this is my choice. We've always felt like it's Lydia's choice, so it is a good question of like who is this person that's going to do something with Janine, because that's my question is, I guess I just don't know why Lydia doesn't see that she could be an aunt, like that she needs to be an aunt, that she needs her in her ranks, that Lydia needs her. If anything else, Lydia using Janine as a pawn, which she always does, you would think that she'd want to keep her around. And I'm just not sure, like, is it just still that new that we don't have, like, because my first thought was because she's fertile, right? But then that is the question I wanted to ask that's driving me crazy, that we had Bruce Miller right in front of us and we didn't ask.
We did forget to ask that.
The question that I wanted to ask was what the deal with Esther's hysterectomy or uterus transplant or removal was, because I just want to know like what the hell that meant and who is deciding that, and if it is to keep her out of being a handmaid, then I feel like after later when Janine's like, I really don't want to be posted again, straight up no, I would guess that she would take the uterus removal if she never had to be posted again. So I'm just wondering, I want to know what was going on with Esther, because I don't know why Lydia wouldn't do the same kind of situation for Janine. Why does she feel so why does she believe on Elizabeth that she has to post her? But yeah.
I think Lydia may just be slow on the uptake here.
Yeah.
I don't know.
That's fair. That's entirely fair. It just hasn't occurred
what I'm
to her
getting.
yet.
Who knows? We could see that next season.
Yeah.
Right.
That'll be when it finally happens,
Yeah.
if it happens.
I think
cool,
it
but-
would make a lot of sense to me, because it is a big kind of a question of like, where do these aunts come from? If they're not fertile, fine, but you would think they would be in an aunt education program early, like we see in the Testaments.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because you can't just like retire the handmaids into auntum, or you could theoretically, I guess, but so.
You could theoretically, but there's a certain amount of brainwashing that needs to be undone and redone.
Exactly. Yes, you're right. The reading would be a big one.
Yeah, but this is a good point. The reading is a huge one, in fact, because right now all of the handmaids most of the handmaids that they have are women that came from a pre-Gilead society, so they can hypothetically at least have like an understanding of reading, even if they haven't done it in ages. But they do need to start. Yeah, they do need to start considering the next generation of aunts and how to build them.
Yeah.
Ooh, interessante.
But
let's not
Lydia's a little slow on the uptake, so she's still working this out.
Speaking of the next generation, though, let's get back to, Naomi becoming the next generation of Mrs. Lawrence.
And we get to see the dress shop. Have we seen this yet? I feel like this was a new her getting fitted. Like, I feel like we've read about it. I think it's in the Testaments more.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's accurate. But yeah, so Naomi's just trying on some wedding garb. And Lydia is trying to bide Naomi to let Janine just stay with them?
Okay.
That's just bizarre. So
many problems here. I feel like this was a leap, and I really think that she was definitely giving Naomi way more credit than she should have.
Right.
Well, I think Naomi got there, though.
She did. She did. I mean, I can understand like her initial reaction of being like, "No fucking way!
Yeah,
are you out of your mind?"
She got here in this conversation?
I mean, she got there eventually.
Eventually, she did.
Like,
yeah.
like by the end of the
Yeah,
episode.
yeah.
I said, I don't think she did, but we'll get there.
Oh.
But in this, I think she got there in this conversation eventually. I'm like, fine. But yeah, we'll get more to the Naomi thing later. But I liked her instant reluctance, but then she changed her. I just loved her sentence. I will not. And then silence. Go on.
She basically tells Naomi to consider the optics. That's just a line that's going to come back in forever for me, because that's all these people seem to do is, we have to keep up the appearances of perfection to hide our hypocrisy. And, this would make Naomi appear to be a model of forgiveness and grace, new women who are strong and faithful. And Naomi's almost sold. She's almost there. She was almost there.
She loves her some status.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
She does love her some status. And I think that she also appreciates that Lydia was selling it as like, in turn, these women are treated with grace and respect. And in the previous episode, when they were when Lawrence was very awkwardly proposing, we see that Naomi herself doesn't feel like she's has the opportunity to be treated with any sort of grace and respect. By that, she was afraid that she was going to be sent to the colonies, and she was going to be damned for Putnam's sins. And what a petrifying position to be in. So I think in this moment, she kind of she looks very concerned, but I think that's also because she understands that feeling of understanding when you have zero security whatsoever, that a little bit of grace and dignity can go a long way towards one's comfort within the walls of Gilead.
Yeah.
She seems to be very good at being obedient when she needs to be.
Yeah, I would agree with that. But I mean, it's really easy for her when she's a wife. Like how difficult has her life really been? You know what I mean? Like she was already married to Putnam by choice, assuming. You know what I mean? So like,
God, can you
I don't
imagine?
know. Like it's really, she's obedient, yeah, but would she be so obedient as a handmaid? Probably not. You know?
Oh man, I don't know. Well, she would never have the opportunity to be a handmaid anyway, though.
That's
right?
what I mean. That's
Yeah.
all I'm saying is like, yeah, she's obedient as she sits pretty at the top of the women hierarchy. It's kind of like that point of like the white women will always vote against their own interests because it's like, well, better in the absence of best. I feel like that's Naomi.
And no need to vote for everyone's best interest. But I think that moment kind of humbled her a little bit, where she did get scared.
Yeah.
And I mean, yes, she's still presently at the top of the totem pole, but I think she sees just how easily she can be knocked down a few pegs.
Yeah, definitely.
You love to see it.
We do love to see it. And she's going to take it in consideration.
Reminded me of that scene with Natalie when she's saying like it's not supposed to be this way, when like there was so much interaction with these children afterwards. I forget where they were going. I think they were going to Naomi's house, and she's just like, we're not supposed to. Oh, after the baptism, where they have to first see these children for a lot of them for the first time, and then that all of a sudden they're in the same house at the same party with them, and she's saying it's not supposed to be this way, and that's all I kept thinking of with this, like how is this going to work with Janine and Naomi in the same house, because it's not supposed to be this way. It's difficult for reasons.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we might never ever see it anyway. Who knows?
We'll see.
Well, the next scene. Wait, can we next scene?
Yeah.
Okay.
I have traumatized you, and I'm sorry.
Next.
So the next scene, June is having a moment of peace with her coffee. Moira is reading. We're chatting. We hear birds. And then there's a knock at the door.
And there ends the peace and quiet of Nicole sleeping in. Or any peace and quiet, really, for any of them.
Like, can she get a moment's peace ever? She really just looked like she was in the zone, like her coffee was good today. You know, when you wake up and your coffee's like just fucking perfect. She was having that moment. So Tuello came to visit. And I do hate how Moira is pretty much a nanny in most scenes.
They really leaned into the nanny in this
Man,
scene.
I know. It's
I
just
know.
like,
I
God damn it, Moira just goes for
I
it.
would be losing it at
Yeah.
this point, but I have an explanation, so I'm okay with it.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
she was real nanny-ish in the scene.
She was. And they found the gunman, and he is an angry man with a gun. Never heard of that before.
No, that doesn't sound vaguely familiar at all. Welcome to America.
Yep. They go outside to escape crying baby, to have real talk. Mm-hmm. And that's where we find out there were 19 people killed at that shooting in the last episode. Which, that's staggering.
I didn't take it as 19 people killed in the shooting. I took it as because there were the shooting happened at the memorial service. I read that as I've been to 19 funerals in 5 days. I'm tired. Thank you for asking. Tuello had to go to all 19 of the funerals for the servicemen that died in the raid.
That's true. Because,
Okay, all
yeah,
right.
because the funeral that, the memorial service that June's referencing with the bulletproof vest in the beginning, I'm pretty sure is another memorial service of another service member.
Correct.
And that's
Okay.
why she was going to give another speech, but that's
Okay.
why she needs a bulletproof
So
vest
I
for
thought
it.
I totally took this as like that thing happened.
Yeah, I
and
did
now
too, but
there's
you're right.
a list of funerals that they have to go through. So that's what I thought.
It could be
we were
like all
referencing
kind of
it could be
combined
both of the
together, but I
things.
feel like it's so fast.
I don't know.
I don't know.
feel
Do we
like
have a timeline of how long it's been since?
we don't have a timeline, but I do feel like if there were any, I mean, the notion that Tuello says that that if that he was apprehended and if there's any ties to Gilead, they'd find out.
Yeah.
And like they obviously still look shell shocked from it. I feel like if there were any casualties at the memorial service that
There
June's
wouldn't be
assassination
funerals,
first assassination attempt had happened, we would have heard about it. We would have heard some sort of mention of some other American being shot or like a death at the memorial service. I feel like that just would have come up. You know? So
And I just don't think they would have managed to get 19 funerals out. I don't think it's been 5 days since the shoot. You know what I mean?
Yes.
I agree with you. I think it was too quick. I thought what you thought, Scarlett. And
Yeah.
I kind of just took it and moved on of like, that's
Yeah.
what they're referencing. And that, but no, you're right. The timeline doesn't make any sense for it to be the funerals of people shot at that memorial service. This is still memorial. These are 19 funerals in 5 days for the service members that were killed
yeah.
in the raid.
Okay.
Yeah, that's 100% how I took it.
Okay.
So.
I was totally on a different plane.
I actually
glad
for
you're on a
once
different
was on
plane, 'cause
that
then it
plane
would have
for
been
you
20.
for a very long time until she reminded me to get off the same plane as you. But I was there with you. I definitely read that the same way, heard it the same way.
Well, what I love about this is that when June asks how Tuello's doing, he gives an honest response and then says, "Thank you for asking." And like they share a glance with each other, and it's very clear in this moment that the two of them genuinely respect each other.
She does give him, this commiseration that she knows what it's like to be responsible for the death of others. And then a few sentences later, may God grant them rest and you too. What the fuck were those words coming out of her mouth? Because that just sounded like straight up Gilead shit to me. And that was another
really?
indicator to me that something was off. I was like, those words are wrong coming from her mouth. She's not in Gilead.
I think I just took it more as like she meant it like we have to move on, like accept that has happened and move forward. I don't know. It didn't sound very Gilead to me. It just sounded like she's referencing the fact that he said he's tired, so she's granting him rest, but also the people they lost, they got to keep fighting. It's kind of more of that conversation they were having before.
That's what I got too, but I feel like her response was, it was a
Sounded
very
Gilead-ish.
Gilead-esque way of saying it. And it's kind of creeped me out.
It's fair.
I can see where you're coming from with that. I didn't take it as being Gilead-esque, but I took it as being surprisingly cold. It felt like my deepest condolences for your loss. May they rest in peace kind of vibes. Like what you say to someone when you don't know what to say to them after they've suffered a loss.
See, I think it was more of that exhaustion of like, he says he's tired. She knows because we feel it through this whole episode of just the weight of her entire experience and how exhausted she is. And so I feel like it's what they're referring to as the people that she says, I know what it's like, to be responsible for people and then to lose them. And then her next statement is, may God grant them rest. And you too. And it's kind of like, though, if you're not dead, then you keep fighting. As exhausted as you are, you just got to keep going. And we lost some people, so I hope they get to rest now, because I feel like June is slightly like, well, if I die, at least I rest, because I'm exhausted just watching her through this whole episode.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I just felt like that was more of them being like, well, we live another day, so we fight another day. And we honor and remember the people that went before us. But she specifically didn't say, I'm responsible for their deaths. She said, they were people I was responsible for, and I lost them. And so I think she's, I liked it. I think she's tired, and I think she's slightly jealous that they are resting.
I think they're both tired.
Yeah. Yeah.
So they have from their pretty well silent nod off. And then we have what is probably my favorite shot of this entire season. And this came up in the Bruce Miller interview, and I have to just talk about it for a moment, is the pan that happens. So you go from June, and then the camera does effectively a full 360. And we get to see that nothing's actually really happening, but so much is happening. There's silence in this otherwise in what was previously a robust neighborhood. There's moving boxes that are out. There's obviously houses that have been abandoned. The neighborhood is packing up and leaving around them. And the way that this camera pans, this was so indicative of me. So if you haven't figured out by now, I love a good horror movie. There's a movie that came out called It Follows that uses this exact same trick. And the reason that they do it is to take your focus away from what's happening with the main character and to shift your focus intentionally to something else is happening around that character. And you need to take your eyes off of the main character and look at the background and look at what's happening around, because something in their environment has shifted drastically. And it's like, as soon as as that camera pan started, I was like, this looks vaguely familiar. This is very creepy and eerie. Oh my gosh, their entire environment was shifted. And I was like, this is exactly like It Follows.
That's so cool.
I loved that. And then, like, when we get back onto June, she's slightly off center, and we see a truck behind her that wasn't there before, was it? Or it was, but maybe we just weren't paying attention to it, so we didn't see it. But now we can't help but notice that this truck is very much directly behind her. And let me see. So this truck just starts to slowly follow June. And you can tell that she's a bit disconcerted. So she starts to, pick up her pace. And then, kaplowy, just slams directly into her. She goes flying, and they drive over her.
With goddamn Kokomo playing the whole time.
With goddamn Kokomo playing the whole time. This was a choice. I would have loved to have heard what other songs were on the table and were left on the cutting room floor, because this was bizarre.
It was. Oh.
I don't know all the lyrics to that song. Do they ever talk about Hawaii?
No.
No, but they talk about Bermuda, Jamaica. Ooh, I want to take it to Bermuda, Bahama.
Come on, pretty mama.
trying to
Key Largo, Montego, baby, why don't we go?
Go down to Kokomo. We'll get there fast, and then we'll
Kind of
take
makes me
it
think
slow.
of Hawaii, and that's where she's going to end up. Or that's where she's heading to.
But I mean, it does. When watching it the first time, I was like, "What the actual fuck is this song?" Like, juxtaposed with, like, we see June's body flying. We see the truck careening over her. We hear the crunch of, like, the truck running over her arm. We hear, like, the truck revving their engine to come back
So
and
scary.
reverse
Oh,
into
it's
her,
scary.
which
Yeah,
that
it's
is
so
such a
scary. I hate
petrifying
that
noise.
sound. Yeah.
Overcut with Kokomo playing. And at first I was like, this doesn't sync up. I hate this. This, like, is chaos in my brain.
Yeah.
But it makes sense coming off of the heels of the conversation of how June and Tuello are both just exhausted, and she needs a break. This girl looks like, and we see it through the entire episode, she needs a fucking vacation. And now she's going to get one. And she's lucky it's not a permanent vacation.
I guess if a hospital stay is all you can get, you're going to take it.
Better in the absence of best.
Right?
And mercifully, it is not a permanent vacation because Luke comes out and somehow manages to get the truck to stop. We don't get to see how he does it, but we get to see a start of a kerfuffle. We get to see that the driver comes out with a pistol or a shotgun.
Yeah.
A shotgun. White guy with a gun. Just like Tuello said. It's a white guy with a gun. It's always a white guy with a gun.
You're the angry guy with a gun.
Or an angry guy with a gun. But
Could be a white guy with a gun, too. They
potato,
usually are.
potato.
The symbol on the bumper of the truck, it had like, one of those, whatever, like militia stickers. I like to call them cosplay groups, but whatever. But it looked like a Gilead sticker
like
of some
Gilead.
sort.
It did.
So this was a Gilead cosplay triot. I'm assuming. There's like other things in this scene that are equally horrifying. Like, okay, when the truck goes over her arm and she pulls it up off the ground and it flops away. Also, when it actually went over her arm, all I could think of was like celery. Celery is crunching.
Oh, that's exactly what it sounds like.
It's
Oh,
celery.
a wet snap.
Was
That's
a
it
wet
right
snap.
there.
Yep.
Celery. Oh,
Celery.
You have just ruined my mornings now. Thank you.
Oh, shit. I
Wait,
forgot
celery
you drink
didn't ruin your-
celery juice every day.
Celery didn't ruin your morning? Come on.
Yeah, right.
It's good. My body loves it. I'm just going to think about grinding up June's arm every morning to my juicer. Oh, this is terrible. Why'd you do that?
Sorry.
Wet snap. Oh. I really like the shot of her eye. We've seen it. It's definitely just a recurring shot, but it reminded me of that scene, the opening episode of season 4 when she's shot and they pick up right after and everyone's around her and they cauterize her wound and it's like they just like snap into like I forget what they do with the sound, but you definitely get that close up of her eye and it felt the same way of just like, ooh, we're going to a different place because there is so much pain in her arm she can't hear. Like everything just kind of stopped at that point. It was like,
Yep.
it was effective.
So Luke finally got to stick up for her
God, I
and
love
protect
that for
her
him.
like he
I was
wanted
so
to.
happy. I didn't know who it was. I just kept thinking with that 360 shot, like there's people around.
Yeah,
But there's no one around.
All of a sudden, everybody's
and then
gone.
All of a sudden, everyone's gone, and that's all I kept thinking about with that shot was like 5 seconds ago there were people here, and now everyone has just decided to go away. And that is terrifying as the engine's revving, and she's about to get run over again. So I didn't know who it was. I just thought it was some guy. So by the time I figured out it was Luke, I was like just so happy for him that he finally gets this moment that he's wanted for so long. I mean, obviously he didn't want June run over, but at least he could be there for her. At least she didn't die in the street while he was drinking coffee.
Yeah, absolutely.
He did a job on him. Like that guy, like under the truck when June's looking at him, he looks like he's already dead. And I'm not going to lie, I felt nothing.
No, why would you? It's not a lot. No, it's fine.
Was there a gunshot that went off?
I don't think so.
I kept trying to play it back, but all I could hear was Luke and the man yelling and like the kind of like foggy, like discordy sort of music. I couldn't tell. Like it sounded like there may have potentially been a gunshot. But at the end of the day, it's irrelevant because the attempted assassin is in the street and Luke is screaming for somebody to call 911 or calling for help, rather.
I like the shot too of June and the guy as he falls to the ground and they're kind of like make eye contact because it's like June looks at him like right in the eye, like he's brought down to her level. And I just kept going back to that quote of her reduced circumstances, and I'm like, she's literally on the ground, like it doesn't get much more reduced than that. And then all of a sudden he's just right there. It was just a cool shot.
And then she's getting loaded onto the gurney and they're on the way to the hospital and you know, you hear lots of medical jargon getting spat back and forth and Luke gets pulled away for questioning to make a statement. So he can no longer.
Before he keeps telling her she'll be okay and are you okay? And there's more urgent okays.
She notices that he's bleeding too.
Yeah.
Because Luke has some bruised up, bloody hands.
Yeah.
Nothing screams I did a thing quite like bruised up, bloody hands.
Well, and it's the imagery from the first episode, which again, I love those bookends. But it was so prevalent in that episode that June had blood on her hands through the whole damn episode. And now at the end of the season, it's Luke with the blood on his hands. And that, oof.
I like the that piercing pain sound that they had in the last scene, and then they really like drove it home here. Because I don't know, not everybody has experienced that pain, but it's when you do, you know it. It's that kind of pain. It's like it sears into your brain as it's happening, and I feel like they really did a great job of portraying that type of hurt with that music.
Agreed. Well, no sooner can they get June, safe and comfortable in the hotel, or in the hotel room, Jesus, in our hospital room, that Nick comes a running. So we get a nice cut of Nick, and he's crossing the bridge to Terabithia.
I love that you said that.
Crossing the bridge between Canada and Gilead, and walks across and greets Tuello on the other side.
I really like the aerial shot of him switching sides. That was cool.
I like the aerial shot of him switching sides. And Tuello, I mean, it's lovely to see Tuello looking pleased as punch. I find it very interesting and effective that this happens directly after the last episode, where they had their 70,000th goodbye, and like Nick makes it abundantly clear that he's not going to leave and he has a life of his own and whatnot. And just can't seem to quit her, can you?
Well, now that happened.
But we'll find out more about that a little bit later, because now we've got some handmaid nonsense to attend to over at Ardua Hall.
Oh, this was some fucking nonsense. Lydia pitches the whole Naomi Putnam thing to Janine. And, first of all, Janine cannot get rid of Naomi. No matter how hard she tries, this woman is just seemingly like a part of her life, as much as she kind of gets along with her now. That's just got to suck. And Janine also doesn't want to get posted. She's been under the assumption that wasn't going to be a thing for her again. Right. And Aunt Lydia's like, don't be lying. I said no such thing.
So annoying. Ugh, Lydia.
Right? But you let her kind of think it.
Yeah,
I mean, especially since you let her sit there for however long.
She's gaslighting her. Come on. You knew exactly what you were setting her up and telling her without telling her. And then she just turns around. I feel like she just completely destroyed Janine's trust in her. I think she was building it up. And then with that statement, it was like, Janine could see past that,
It was also like the manipulation too of how would you like to see your sweet baby Angela?
I thought it was interesting that she called her your sweet Angela. You're going to go put her in a house. You're going to say your Angela and then turn around and tell her to go live with Naomi. And we're going to see in the next scene that Naomi's going to have all these rules. And it's like, no. Make up your mind, Lydia.
Yeah.
Is it her Angela or is it not? Because Naomi seems to think it is definitely not. Right. And so does the rest of Gilead. So figure it out.
Exactly.
She's offering her a really shitty choice. It's not really a choice if the choice sucks. Just like, the last episode when Larry was like, well, come on, June, come on over. You want to, but yeah, it sucks about Hannah, but better in the absence of best. Yeah. It's a shitty choice. It's not really a choice if it's a really shitty choice.
It's just like the quote unquote choice that all of these handmaids were quote unquote given, where they could either choose to go to the colonies to a certain death or become a handmaid to atone for being sinful women.
Yeah.
Really solid choice, no matter which way you slice it. And I do love that we leave this scene with Janine like having this look of almost panic on her face and duress, and you just hear the dogs barking in the background. Always a great sign in Gilead to hear those dogs barking. Never ominous at all.
Dogs come out.
I feel exhausted for Janine in that by the end of that conversation too. Of like, I think she's just realizing her life is just a carousel that's going to keep spinning around and around and around, and she's never going to get off. And it's equally as exhausting to think about how many times Janine is going to just keep getting like out and then pulled back in and out and pulled back in. And every time she thinks she's found like a new way of existence that she can live with, it changes again for her, and her circumstances get reduced as well. And so it's interesting. I feel like we do see a big change in Janine by the end of the episode, just in terms of her overall character. But yeah, she's exhausted too. They're all exhausted.
Yeah.
And I'm exhausted watching them.
Shall we new scene?
Yeah. Let's cut back to Nick. Just hanging out at the hospital, watching June. And it's fine because, he and Tuello are hanging out there, and Tuello explains that the police will bring Luke to her room as soon as they finish questioning him, and Tuello gives Nick some privacy.
Nick of little emoting looks like he's feeling feelings.
Which is a very impressive thing for Nick to be feeling feelings. I'm sorry, I'm being snarky here. It is very sweet, and in his way, he is really emoting here.
I liked it. And I liked him when he held her hand, but we've seen so much of them holding hands, so I liked it.
Yeah, that was very sweet.
It reminded me a lot of June when she had to say goodbye to Hannah in the beginning of season 3. Without waking her up.
Yeah.
And it was kind of that same feeling of like he's, and she kind of stirred at the end, which was nice. Like she knew he was there, which was kind of the same thing Hannah did with her.
That stir was very lovely because, so one of the things that, one of the quintessential examples of that in literature and in plays specifically is Romeo and Juliet. These two star-crossed lovers, and Romeo kills himself at Juliet's grave because he thinks that she's dead, and then right after he does that, she wakes up from her poison spell and sees her dead lover there. And like for me, like having Nick say that sort of goodbye without waking her, of like touching her arm, kissing her head, walking away, and then June wakes up right afterwards, just barely missing him. It's like one of those like, oh, you two are star-crossed. Two star-crossed lovers.
I like that. Thanks, Roxy.
It made me think of Sleeping Beauty, kissing Sleeping Beauty.
Oh.
But I like yours better.
I mean, it's a rare thing for me to actually give Nick a little bit of levity, but I will. One of the moments I really loved about this scene though was Nick quietly contemplative next to her bed, next to June's bed. And the way the light was hitting that boy's wedding ring, his wedding ring was glowing.
Was it? I didn't notice
shit.
that at all. That's cool.
Absolutely
notice
vibrant.
that.
It was
That's
like
so cool. I
the
definitely didn't
center of the
notice it.
scene. It seemed to be illuminated from within.
What scene were we watching, Scarlett? I'm like, nope. I was too busy watching their hands. I missed the glowing ring on his finger. I don't know what I was doing. That's cool though.
Oh,
really
dude,
cool.
it like looked to me so much like he was just leaning there staring at her with this ring glowing, and he made the conscious choice to honor his honor the ring, and like he was there for June, but he could have very easily at that moment just defected to Canada and called it a day. But like for me, it was like that sort of like Rose was very much prominent and with him in his thoughts at that moment, despite him being with June.
I'm sure he feels like a dick. I'm sure. I mean,
I don't think
he's already
even
like,
thinking about her.
No,
hey, I mean, he
Weird.
could be.
I think there's reasons he's not defecting to Canada, but I don't think that's one of them. Because in the next scene, he's going to say to Tuello that June doesn't need him. I think to him, what's he going to do there while she's there with her family? She's got Luke and his daughter, but you know what I mean? I think he truly believes that. So I don't think because if he was thinking about his marriage, he wouldn't be there. And I think that Rose says it as much later.
which is fair, but I think that's also like, I don't want to say like it was. Allow me to amend my statement then. I think that his ring glowing like that was a subconscious reminder for him.
Yeah.
As opposed to being like, oh gosh, I am a married man, but I'm sitting here next to June. I think it was a subconscious point. So
That's cool.
What if that was something that he was thinking? Because in the conversation that follows, when he goes back to the bridge and Tuello has him sign papers, he doesn't have a very good opinion of himself. I mean, he really just doesn't feel like he's deserving of any thanks. Then, he at the end of the conversation, he says, she doesn't need me. I'm nothing. And I'm like, okay, Nick, come on. Wow. Like, this is really, first of all, it's amazing to hear him say something so honest and sad, because we don't usually get a whole lot out of Nick. But I was like, wow. So maybe I wonder if he was feeling like a douchebag because he was up here in Canada. And yeah, he does have this pregnant wife at home who he later says he tried. And I feel like Nick has enough of a conscience in him where he's probably, feeling both sides of it.
Yeah.
And it's very apparent, when they pan out and we see him going from like US to Canada. It's like he's playing both sides.
Yeah.
It must suck to play both sides.
Yeah.
And he is literally playing both sides now as well because he has a contract signed with Tuello.
Yeah.
Yep.
So for me, one of the takeaways of this moment was Nick was saying, they won't stop. I'll need to know you. You'll protect her. And Tuello saying, I'll do everything I can. And then he keeps repeating, I'll do everything I can.
Yeah.
Tuello refuses to give any sort of sense of certainty to Nick whatsoever, which is the exact opposite of how Tuello and June's final conversation goes. So to flip forward, when Tuello hands them the paperwork and June stays behind for just a quick second, like they're at the train station, June says, hey, can you do me a favor? Can you please just tell Nick that I'm safe and tell Nick that I'm okay? And Tuello, without hesitation, just says, yes, I can do that. Like, and offers that to her without any sort of like of the same like, I'll do everything I can. It was just.
I think it was different at that point.
I think it was different too, but I think it was a nice comparison of how Tuello handles both of them. Like Tuello handles Nick extremely professionally, and is not willing to give that, or not willing to like give any sort of absolutes. And with June, I think that it's like his relationship with her is so different that. And he respects her, and I think he appreciates and admires her that he is willing to give that absolute.
I like that.
That's how I took it too. That makes sense to me.
Also, guys, we got a little bit of an answer about the eyes.
Yeah, I like that.
Most of the drivers work for the eyes.
A little bit of an answer.
Okay.
That is a statement. Now I have 6 more questions. Does everyone know that, or does Nick know that? Because I just feel like if everyone knows the drivers are eyes, doesn't it defeat the purpose of being an eye? I thought they had to be secret. But I still don't know. Does Nick know it just because he's Commander Eye? Not Commander Eye anymore, obviously, but, he was an eye, so he knows things, or, I don't know. But we know something. Drivers are eyes, so I'll take it. And now it makes sense as to why Nick didn't have a driver drive him up to Canada.
Right.
Nick knows how to stay stealth. He knows what's up.
Yeah.
Do we want to go back to June's house?
Yeah.
Yo, it is windy like the Waterford's house up in here. And what is up with the 3-pane mirrors? It's like a past, present, future thing happening. Like, tell me, spooky bitches, what did you see here? Because I thought this was the coolest shot.
I agree that it was a very cool shot. I know what you mean with these 3-way mirrors, but I feel like it's just one of those, again, recurring shots that we have seen a lot. So I didn't have anything necessarily too new other than I just really, really liked this shot more so than the other ones even. It was really cool.
Yeah. I did appreciate that the 3-way mirror kept coming up. For me, this harkened back to the earlier episode from this season, Ballet, where you had Serena and June and cutting back and forth between between Serena and then June looking at herself in the 3-way mirror. And that episode did not end well, and was a bit more ominous of an ending, but still not superb. So seeing that 3-way mirror for me reflected to me immediately. I was like, this episode's not going to end well. There's just no way for it to. Those are doom mirrors at this point.
Poor June.
I think that Serena's mirror at the Waterford's house was. So I'll go with doom mirror. Yeah.
Doom mirror. I love that. She looks very fragile and barely there. And Luke comes in, and Luke had a gun. When did he pull? Did he have his gun on him? Did you mention a gun before in this scene?
No,
I was referencing it, I think, about this scene because he didn't have a gun before, right?
He didn't have a gun before. The only mention I'd made of a gun previously was the driver of the truck.
All right, scratch that. For some reason, I thought that before when we were talking about it, you referenced this, and I was like, "There's a gun in that scene? No, there's not. Is there?" That was very confusing.
I think you might be thinking about when we were talking about where to cut, and I started talking about this scene, and I said Luke strides
Thank
in
you.
with the gun.
All
Because
right.
I remember I was like, no, I did say that. But then I'm like, oh, that was when I was saying we should cut here.
Okay, thank you. I was like, am I missing something? Because I think I'm missing a big chunk in my notes if that's
you
the
and
case.
I on the same page today.
Kind of.
We're on the wrong page, but we're there together every time.
We've got with the books open, and you're like on one page, and I'm on the other.
Fair. And we're in a different room than
pretty
everyone
good
else.
for us.
So thanks for keeping me company. This is new for us.
All right.
So Luke strolls in with the gun and says, everything's going to be all right. That's not ominous at all.
But that's what he's been saying. I'm telling you, he's been saying it through this whole episode. Every scene that Luke's in, it's going to be okay. You're going to be safe. It's going to be all right. We're still hearing it.
Yeah. And June's like, are you safe having a gun? Do you feel safe having a gun in the house around Nicole? Oh, yeah, sure. Got to protect ourselves.
Stay safe.
Gotta stay safe. And June's response, like you could feel, like you could hear the ellipses in her response, just like that pregnant pause, and then like the soft trailing. Okay.
I wonder if she's also a little bit fucked up on painkillers too.
Oh, that's a good point.
Probably.
Probably is for sure, yeah.
So I thought that this conversation was interesting because it's shades of a conversation that had happened 8 years ago when her bank account got pulled. He's trying to comfort her, and Luke is like kind of convincing himself like this is not going to be like Boston. And June is like, wait, that's not your fault, right? And he says, I'm not going to let anyone hurt you. I promise. And it just kind of smacked of like, don't worry, I'll take care of you. Like, this is not reassuring. She's heard this before.
Yeah.
It's not reassuring.
Unlike the scene from 7 years ago when the bank accounts were pulled, though, Luke acknowledges that that perhaps a little bit too late. He said this is not going to be. He said it's not going to be like Boston. Yeah. And at least he's trying. And June says, like, Boston wasn't your fault. You know that, right? Does he know that? Does he actually know that?
Right.
I don't think he knows that.
I think he's got that survivor's guilt thing going on.
If that shot when she lays down on the bed, it kind of reminded me of, I think it's Pigs, season 4, episode 1, when she lays down in the bed after killing that guy or letting everyone else kill him. Remember, she's just so tired, and she lays down, and it just feels so good to be like, oh my God, she can finally rest with some safety. And so to like think about that, and then to see like even everything she's been through since that moment, her laying down on that bed right there, and then the camera spinning above her, it just really, really hammered home how exhausted she must be and how vulnerable she is, and that safety just doesn't exist anymore. Like, this was the dream. It in Pigs, her being there. The dream was Canada. That's safety. She's not going to be able to rest till she gets there. But even in that episode, I remember her saying to Alma, like, they're just going to keep there. They'll never stop. And it's like, yeah, they really will never stop. They're still hunting her down in Canada. It's exhausting. But I liked that Luke was downstairs. I mean, I don't know. I was comforted by Luke's presence. If nothing else, not because I think he's going to keep her any safer than he ever could at any point, because you just can't keep her safe. Like, that's it's not going to happen. But I was relieved. I hate how the episode ends, because at that moment I was so relieved that she at least had someone with her. You know what I mean? She has a team. She has a support system. She has someone that she can rest, and people are going to handle things downstairs. Like, might not be the way she'd do it, but she's not alone. Yeah. And that's everything. That's everything she's ever, that's just such a theme. All of her time at Gilead was camaraderie, not being alone, finding your people somewhere. And so I'm like, she's not alone. And there's that. And then by the end, I was like, she's so alone. So that's why I feel so good when Serena shows up.
Things are bad when you're happy that Serena shows up.
Good God, seriously. The rotating of the camera, so when she does lay down and the camera kind of spins, they did that a few times at the very beginning of the season as well. Namely, when she's laying in bed and Buddy Holly's Every Day is
Yep.
playing,
Yep.
and the camera just sort of is spinning around her while she's laying in bed, but instead of being cozy and like sort of in this like spooned up position, she's laying in bed, staring straight at the ceiling, and Luke is snuggled up next to her, sleeping, and the camera is spinning while she's just staring straight ahead. So it's nice to have like the two different visual differences of like that spinning was happening because she was in like she was in a bit of mental turmoil, but it was different, and now the turmoil is different, but the circumstances haven't changed.
And the blood is on Luke's hand.
Mm-hmm. It's like a visual passing of time.
Yes.
Is that it? Do we have
That's it.
anything else to say about this?
We have a lot more to say about this episode, but we're going to get to all that in the back half.